Hey everyone, it's me, Cam, the design griot, and today we're going to talk about how to launch your UX design career. Now, this video is geared for folks who are making a career switch into UX, but if you are a college student or getting ready to graduate, you can still find gems in this video as well. Now, what you'll need to do is grab a sheet of paper, pen or pencil, something to write and jot down your ideas. I want this to be an interactive video so that we can really dive deep, you can take some notes, and that you can think critically about how you're going to make your career switch. Another thing, public service announcement. This is not meant to be a series of steps that you follow exactly. Take what applies, leave the rest, right? I just want to give you a framework or a set of guidelines, things, tips, advice that served me when I was making my career switch from education. And hopefully these tips, these guidelines, this advice can be useful for you too. Now, without further ado, do you have something to write with? Check. Do you have something to write on? Check. So then let's get started. So the first thing that I want you to think about as you're making a switch into the UX field is to think about your why. What is your why? Why UX? Why are you, specifically you, yes, I am talking to you. Why are you switching into the UX career field? The reason why, get it? The reason why it's important to think about your why is because your why is something that will help ground you. It's something that will help you stay motivated as obstacles arise, because trust me, as someone who did switch their careers, obstacles arose when I was trying to make the switch. So having a why will keep you focused, it will keep you motivated, and it will just encourage you to keep going. Simon Sinek has a famous TED Talk called Start With Why. You should definitely check that out if you haven't already. Basically, the premise of it is people do not buy into products or services, but they buy into the why behind the product and the service. They buy into the purpose. The purpose is the why. So craft your why, think about your why. Another thing that I find useful in knowing your why is if you plan on working for a company, bet your bottom dollar that in the interview with the hiring manager, it's going to come up your past career, your past job experience, right? Especially if you're switching into UX and you didn't happen upon UX. It wasn't a part of your traditional education, right? It wasn't a part of your it wasn't a part of your first career or your first few jobs. Then hiring managers are going to ask, a hiring manager will say, oh, I see you have experience in accounting and then now you're doing UX. Why did you switch to UX? It's going to come up. I have found when I have applied to jobs, my past career experience in education has come up and they have asked me, why did I switch to UX? Take a few moments, pause this video if you need to jot out why you want to switch into the UX design career field. The second thing I would think about is what is your end game? Meaning, what is your goal? And work backwards. If you can, take a few moments, close your eyes. You can get into a meditative state. You can close your eyes right now. And I want you to imagine in this UX design career field, if things were to go as perfectly and as seamlessly as possible, once you've launched your career, once you've taken the steps to launch your career, from now until retirement, what would you want your UX career to look like? And just imagine a year out from now. Imagine 3 years out from now. Imagine 5 years out from now. Imagine 10 years out from now, until maybe you can imagine until you are able to retire. So some of the things to consider as you imagine is, do you want to start off working for someone and then later on start your own company, agency, or freelance? Do you just want to, as soon as you make the transition, start freelancing immediately? What kind of company do you see yourself working for if you want to work for someone? A nonprofit, an enterprise company, a FANG? If you've established that you do want to work for a company, you will be a senior designer one day. Do you want to manage a team? Do you want to manage a department? Do you want to individually contribute as a senior designer? Also think about different design niches, right? Maybe you like animation, you like the micro interactions that you come across on web pages and apps, and motion design is something that you're really into. Okay, maybe you see yourself as a motion designer. Or maybe you like marketing design, where you're able to create a logo, where you're able to create email templates to communicate brand identity. Think about those things as you imagine 5 years, 10 years, all the way into retirement. What does endgame look like for you? The next thing I want you to think about as you are launching your UX design career is, how are you going to learn the design skill set and the core competencies of user experience design? Basically, two paths in switching into the UX design field. Either you teach yourself, or you have a program or a course teach you the core competencies of user experience design. So that could be at a traditional college, university, that can be at a boot camp, or that can be an apprenticeship that a job or a company offers. Some factors that you'll need to think about as you research and plan into how you're going to learn the core competencies of user experience design is experience, time, money, and support. Let's talk about experience. The answer is going to be different, right? If you're already a graphic designer and you just want to start, if you're already a graphic designer and you want to switch into the UX design career field, that's going to look different from someone who doesn't have a background in UX design, right? You could also be, for experience, you could also be a UX researcher currently, but you want to get your hands dirty more into the sketching and the building and the actual design production stages, the prototyping, but you already have the UX background, the UX research background. Maybe you already have an art background. Maybe that was your major. Maybe you majored in art history, and maybe now you want to work on some user interfaces. You want to get into tech, right? It might be more cost efficient if you already have some experience or background in the UX field, whether that be through an art major, whether that's through graphic design, whether that's through UX research, right? If you already have some type of experience and background, it may be more cost efficient to just teach yourself, right? That could be one way in which you make your decision. Or you can lean on a UX buddy, someone who's already a UX designer who can mentor you. And with having a mentor and teaching yourself, then that could be a way in which you pivot into the UX design space. For experience, just take 30 seconds, take some time to draw out or write out, do you have some experience in the design or art world that you can leverage? Go ahead and take some time to write out your answer. Another factor that I brought up was time, right? So you need to start planning out how much time can you realistically dedicate to learning user experience design. I find that with teaching yourself, you'll have more flexibility, but it might be a bit harder because you'll have to hold yourself accountable and find accountability somewhere, maybe a group, maybe friends and family. With a program or a course, they already have the curriculum laid out for you. You'll see your schedule and you'll just have to plug in and see if you're willing to dedicate 3 months, right? Which is, I think, typical for a boot camp. It was typical for the boot camp that I took. 3 months. If it's a boot camp, it'll be 3 months of your life. So think about if you can realistically be disciplined enough to teach yourself the core competencies of user experience design. And for the time factor, go ahead, pause this video if you need to, write or draw out how much time can you dedicate to learning UX design. Another factor that you need to consider as you research and plan, how much money can you realistically dedicate to learning UX design? How much money can you spend on a course, right? Whether it's a course on Udemy, whether it's a course On Skillshare, it could be an actual program that you take at a college or university. It could be a boot camp. How much money can you dedicate to learning UX design, right? That can help you make your decision whether you're going to teach yourself or whether you're going to buy a course or a program, or maybe you do a bit of self-teaching, or you self-teach through a course on Udemy. Just figure out how much money you have to dedicate to learning UX design. So in terms of money, go ahead and take some time to write or draw out how much money can you realistically dedicate to learning UX design. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed, right? Talking about having experience, the time and the money can somewhat be defeating, right? It can somewhat be demotivating, especially if you don't have enough money and you don't have enough time. So now let's look at the support factor. What supports do you currently have in place to help you along your UX journey? Do you have a friend or a family member who can make a donation if you're wanting to buy a course? Maybe you found a particular program that you're really interested in, but you don't have enough money. Does the program offer a scholarship or a stipend that can help you fund a portion of it? You'll be happy to know that if you're in an underrepresented group in tech, there are a lot of stipends and scholarships out there to help fund part or all of your UX design course. Do your research, check to see if the program that you have your eye on is offering a stipend or a scholarship, or maybe just find one that already has that baked in. If the one you have your eye on doesn't, just keep an eye out for that. Also, think about your current company. Check to see if your current company has a rotational program where you can learn design. If you have no design experience, that could be graphic or UX, right? See if there's a rotational program that is being offered at your company. That can be a great way to get in touch with some folks who are part of the graphic design or UX design field, and you can learn from them. You can shadow them. Folks on the team can be your mentor. See if you have a rotational program. That could be a great way to gain some hands-on experience, learn on the job, and you don't even have to sacrifice your job or quit, right, just to dive into a new career. So look into current rotational programs at your place of employment. That could be a great resource. Another thing that I see that doesn't get talked about a lot in launching your career is that sometimes folks don't have the equipment that they need to learn tools of the trade. And so if you're not able to get a donation from a family member to get the equipment, the laptop, right, or the desktop that you need to run these RAM intensive programs, then that could be a barrier to entry. So what you can do is see if your library has a loaner program where you can borrow a laptop to at least learn for the day. If you're not able to install anything on it, see if you can work with your library so they could probably buy a license to Sketch, or see what workarounds there are. If they're not able to buy a license for Sketch, or they're not able to install Sketch, maybe you already own a license to Adobe Creative Cloud and Sketch, but they're drawing the line on downloading these applications onto the laptop, then consider Figma. Figma is web-based, so that could be a great workaround. But don't be discouraged if you don't have the equipment you need. See if you can borrow a laptop from the library. See if there's a friend or family member who can let you borrow their laptop from time to time. With that being said, go ahead and draw or write out, list out some supports that you have in terms of time, list some supports that you may have in terms of money, list some supports that you may have in terms of experience, right? The rotational programs I talked about, where that could be a free way to gain experience. Also, list out supports in terms of equipment. Think about those things, take some time, pause this video if you need to. I do want to talk about how do we transition out of the learning phase into the ready to work phase, kind of like how we transition into the design phase into ready for development stage. One of the things I wish I would have done when I was enrolled in boot camp is to think a bit earlier about the types of work that I want to show on my portfolio. I would say that it is never too early to start thinking about what you're going to put on your portfolio. It is never too early to start thinking about what you're going to put on your portfolio. So think about how much time as you're learning, right? As you're going through the boot camp, as you're going through college, whatever program you're on, right? As you're teaching yourself, you need to dedicate time and think about this earlier rather than later. To transition into the ready to work phase, you need a portfolio and you need to dedicate time into gathering all your artifacts. You need to dedicate time to actually writing the content, and you need to dedicate time to designing your website or PDF. I've usually used websites and not PDFs, but that's another conversation for another day. But you need to be thinking about dedicating time to doing that. I wish I would have done a bit earlier is thinking about crafting your design resume. I would say it's never too early to start thinking about how to craft a design resume. It's never too early to start looking at examples. So 2 things to start thinking about, looking into, making time for is your portfolio and your resume. Think about gathering artifacts, think about writing out the content, and think about the actual steps that go into hosting a website, designing a website. You need to be thinking about those things. If you have decided to go the bootcamp route, they have already implemented this in their curriculum. They might give you 2 to 3 weeks to design your portfolio, and the instructors kind of help you and walk you through it. And maybe they might give you a week to work with a career coach that's part of the boot camp to design your resume, list out your work experience, right? They may have already factored this into the boot camp, but I mean, let me tell you, you think it's enough. While you're going through it, it may seem like enough, but it's never too early to start thinking about that ahead of time. And especially if instructors have office hours, especially if the career coach that's paired with you for your boot camp or your program or your curriculum, what this could be in college too, it's never too early to really start thinking about these things and to start asking the questions that you need to ask. Because one thing that you don't want is to have a big gap between, okay, you're finished with the curriculum, you're finished teaching yourself, and then you have this big gap at the end where you now have to scramble to get your resume ready, to get your portfolio ready. You want to shorten that as much as possible and start thinking about these things and doing these things earlier rather than later. Obviously, if you are teaching yourself, this is something that you're going to have to factor into your self-learning curriculum that you designed for yourself. I don't really have any tips on how to do that. That's going to be up to you to plan out. I did not teach myself, but I'm sure there are videos out there that walk you through. I'm sure there are videos out there where folks have taught themselves and they have shown how they've planned all of that. So look for those. Also, one thing to consider is in transitioning into the ready to work phase, folks also don't tell you how long it can take to land a job. You need to be prepared for the fact that it could take you 3 to 4 months to land a job. Okay, so what will you do in the meantime, in between time? How can you be prepared? Start thinking about these things as well. Our exercise, okay, you need to write out or draw out how long will you give yourself to land a job. Are you going to give yourself 3 months? Are you going to give yourself 2 months? Are you going to give yourself 4 months? Just start reflecting on how long you're going to give yourself to land a job. Specifically for my folks who are enrolling in a boot camp or thinking about enrolling in a boot camp, I want you to look at the curriculum. Do you see a window where you have a break? Do you see a window where there's 3 to 4 weeks before the course ends, or I guess the actual program ends. Before the program ends, do you see where there's a space for career outcomes? What I want you to do is to begin mapping out how you can beef up your experience and beef up your resume and your portfolio by adding on more client work or more work that features you working cross-functionally with developers, content folks, and product owners. The thing about these boot camps and even teaching yourself is that a lot of the projects that you do are conceptual. Client work, or work that showcases your ability to work cross-functionally with content folks, with product owners, and with developers, is going to look more favorable, look stronger, and communicate your expertise on your portfolio and your resume. So in those 3 to 4 weeks before the program ends, I want you to think about, are there any hackathons that you can join, whether it's for the day, whether it's over a series of weeks or a few days? Are there any hackathons that you can join and work with other folks in the tech space, like product owners, content writers, and developers, where you all come together and you've built a product and you can document that and showcase that on your portfolio? Maybe there aren't hackathons and it doesn't work, the timing isn't exactly synchronous, or the timing isn't actually in sync for you to join a hackathon around the time where you're exiting, 3 or 4 weeks before you're exiting out of your bootcamp. Is there a nonprofit where you can volunteer your design work? Now, don't do anything that's going to take a month to do, obviously, right? Because you want to focus on exiting the program, getting all of your your career deliverables ready, like your portfolio, your resume, and all of that, and the job applications. You want to focus more on that piece. But maybe there's like a quick turnaround project that you can do for like a week for an organization that you could do it on a volunteer basis. It'll take a week and you could throw that up on your site, right? The point that I'm trying to make is that client work and work that shows your ability to work with other folks on a product team is going to come a lot stronger. One thing I wish I would have done is use the time for my breaks, or use the time like 3 to 4 weeks before my boot camp ended to find a hackathon or a quick turnaround project that I could use to put on my portfolio. So, exercise time. Are there any upcoming hackathons that you can join to work cross-functionally with product owners and developers? Or is there a nonprofit organization that you can contribute to? Find out, do some research, write that down, and also mark it in your calendars. So the next tip that we are going to talk about is to network early and to network often. I would say that as soon as you know that you want to transition into the UX design career field, then start reaching out to folks and organizations ASAP. The most common way to do this is through social media. Design Twitter and LinkedIn are great resources. They have a thriving community. So if you don't have a Twitter account or a LinkedIn profile that's specifically for your design career, right? Might not be a good idea to mix and match the personal and the design career, but that's up to you. I would create a dedicated designer profile for Twitter and for LinkedIn, and keep your personal profile separate, but that's up to you. Also, you can use Meetup to find design events in your community, and not just design events, right? Where you can just network with other designers, meet senior designers and get their feedback and learn from them. But you can also meet up with other folks in the tech industry, like developers, product owners. So consider joining a product management group, consider joining a coding group, and go to coding events and network with other folks adjacent to your role as a designer. It can not only just be a great way to network, but to also develop empathy, right? Empathy is such a big part of our world as designers. We can develop empathy for developers, and for product owners who we work with and how that shape and informs the design work that we do. Meeting other folks adjacent to your work as a designer can bring you potential job leads. You never know. So exercise time. Go ahead and use this time to create a designer profile for your Twitter account or for LinkedIn if you have not done so already, or use this time to list out organizations that you're interested in being a part of, or design events or coding events that you'd like to join to network with folks in the field. No matter what your expertise is as a designer, it is pivotal that you are in touch with the latest happenings in the design world. You want to make sure that you understand the latest methodologies, the latest tools in our industry. One way to stay on top of the latest trends is to join a design newsletter. Another way to stay on top of the latest trends, the latest tools, is to join a professional design organization. And maybe as you get comfortable with the design organization, volunteer for a leadership role. That could be a great way to flex your design skills, to meet new people, and to just strengthen the core design competencies that you already know. Many design newsletters can come with events and design conferences that you can join. Also, consider joining newsletters that have UI challenges, right? You can see how other designers are stretching interfaces and coming up with cool micro interactions, and how they're playing around with visual design to make the experience seamless. So join those newsletters, join those UI challenges. They will help strengthen you. They will help you see what are the latest trends. Another note on learning is that when you take a boot camp, right, or even if you are teaching yourself UX design, not a lot of emphasis is placed on getting proficient with design tools. So some of the design tools that are really popular in the industry right now is Adobe XD, Figma, and Sketch. Now, if you decide to work for a company or work with a client it might not matter so much, but for a company, different companies will use a specific design tool. It's important that you try to get as proficient as you can in most of the major tools. You might not get everything covered, right? You might not be really proficient in Adobe XD, but if you're proficient in Sketch and somewhat proficient in Adobe XD, then that can help, right? My point is that try to learn as much of the tools as you can as possible and to get comfortable with them and proficient. That way you can stay versatile, and that will make you marketable to companies. So exercise time. Go ahead and use this time to subscribe to a few design newsletters so that you can stay in touch with the design trends of the industry, and or use this time to write down a list of courses or find a course that will help you grow your proficiency in a design tool. So the last and final tip, but not the least important, is to always be documenting. So documentation is so important, to not just to throw something on your portfolio, but also to document your progress and to celebrate your wins and your own personal career journey. This is a tip that I think even mid-level, senior, and junior designers could use more of. Take pictures of yourself learning, take pictures of design artifacts, take pictures of you designing with your team, maybe designing with your manager. Of course, ask for permission if other people are involved, but just make sure you are documenting. You could also save or take screenshots of you designing in a tool to throw up on your website. You can take pictures of all the design sketches that you've done in your dot paper or your grid paper and throw them on your website as well. Why is documentation important, right? You are a brand. You offer a service to your future employer or to a future client, right? And no one knows you from Adam. Your portfolio is a proof of concept. It is the example, right? It is the proof of concept that shows people that you can do what you say that you can do. Make life easier on yourself by documenting your work, documenting those artifacts so that you can just throw them up on a site, a slide deck, or a PDF later on. All right, folks, so that is it for this video. I hope that you found this helpful so that you can launch your UX design career. Feel free to use the comment section to add on to any tips that I've shared, to ask questions, and to jot down any notes. Also, be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you can stay up to date with the newest content, okay? So be well and happy creating.